OpenAI just launched a platform that onboards AI agents like employees. And nobody in marketing is talking about what that means for the brief. We've spent the last year talking about what AI will do to jobs. But OpenAI just changed the question. Last month, they launched Frontier, a platform that onboards AI agents like employees, gives them institutional memory, and puts them to work across the enterprise. The reaction online was split. Executives were excited, creatives a bit unsettled, and buried in that is a real issue. Not, will AI replace me, but who is actually doing the briefing now? Now, today, Will and I are joined by Jules to dig into just that question. The brief has always been where strategy becomes creativity. But if AI agents are being onboarded like junior creatives, what happens to the brief? Is it dead? Or is it now the most important piece of the puzzle? Will, over to you. I think we have some questions for Jules.
Hello, Jules. Welcome back.
Yeah, hi.
So I've got a question for you. OpenAI is framing these agents as co-workers. They get onboarded, they learn the institutional knowledge, they improve over time. From where you sit as a creative, what does that mean to you? Does that description of what an agent is excite you or concern you?
Definitely excites me. But I do understand why creatives are concerned about it. I guess it's the same fear we had when AI first came in. Is this a tool or is this software that is going to replace me? Is AI going to replace me? I think this is the most common question from 7 years ago when we first started out to today. With agents, I think it's that question is even more in people's mind, especially in creatives' mind. For me, I use AI like a tool. It's an extension of beyond the Adobe tools that we use for creating outputs. But with agents, it's less of a tool and more like having creatives that I can manage, or a creative that I will manage, along with the other creatives, the real creatives that I manage. So the question is, can we lead a team that includes AI? If yes, the output multiplies, it scales. I think if no, it can be quite overwhelming. I think that agents right now is agents to creatives right now is raising the bar on what it means as a creative these days. I think that this is the moment where maybe we might want to redefine our roles and our skill sets.
And speaking of roles and skill sets, let's talk a bit about the brief. Not on our side, on the delivery side, but on the client side. Who writes the brief? Because they who write the brief control everything that comes next, right? So before AI, do you think the brief was already in trouble? Or is this something new? And if not, if the brief was, perfectly fine before AI, has AI just ruined it? Where are you at?
I think the brief has been in trouble for a while. I would say not all the time, but enough that it makes it quite consistent. And yes, AI will definitely expose it. I've seen some briefs written in a rush just to get the work started with the creative teams, just very quickly, one-liners, two-liners, boom, send it off to the creative team to kind of decipher it. I've also seen briefs where there's so much information inside it and there's no clear priority. And it kind of leads teams to compensate with more rounds of questionings, the back and forth, and then more feedback. It can be quite chaotic. Before AI, teams at least could when they receive these briefs, they could recover by asking these questions and brainstorming together, because that's what we do as humans. We fill in the gaps. Of briefs, right? But with AI, you don't really have that buffer anymore, or at least most people think that they don't need that buffer, because prompts, if you if your input is weak, the output is bad. And I think I've mentioned this several times, even to my own team as well. It's as good, your output to the brief is as good as your prompt. It's the same thing here as well when you're creating a brief or writing for the brief. Especially when there's no human to figure it out.
Interesting, especially as I might argue that prompting for an image or a few seconds of video is easier for a skilled creative person than writing a good brief is for a marketer. Writing good briefs is hard, even for the best marketers. So let's talk a bit about who might write the brief in an AI world. If an AI agent is going to execute a campaign, sure, we've talked about that lots of times together, someone still has to brief it. Is that the same skill as briefing a human creative team? Or is it something totally different? So I guess there's two questions there, really. It's like, what is required to brief AI well, not prompt it? And what could it look like if AI helped the marketers do the brief writing?
I think in a traditional process in an agency or in a creative team, the brief comes from a accounts lead to a CD or an art director who would then bounce around ideas and kind of interpret the brief, challenge it, and then shape it. Right? That's the normal process. I feel like that part doesn't change, but the difference between briefing AI is that when you are working with a human team, you know each other. You probably have worked together for a really long time, or you have established that working relationship with this person. You are briefing or talking about the brief to one another, you get each other. Some things don't have to be said in between the lines. You kind of like get it. Like how when we work with, can I mention it, evals, when you tell me like this XYZ needs to be done, I'm like, I get you. And that's because we've worked together for a really long time. And then I can take that brief, or I can take that understanding and brief my team. With AI, you have to be a lot more detailed, and that's kind of a skill set that you need. With AI, you need to at least write out, why are you doing the output? Why are you generating this output? Or why are you briefing this in the first place? Why does it matter? What does success look like? And what doesn't? It shouldn't be. Which means that you have to actually start thinking, then writing, maybe even mood boarding or brainstorming with someone, another human, before you actually write down the brief and send it over to the AI.
Interesting. Reminds me of poker. You're playing the person across the table, right? You're not playing the game. Yeah, I mean, there have been lots of discussions about sycophancy and models kind of not pushing back, not challenging. And I know that some of the biggest experiential leaps that have been made is when models have been released that do push back a bit more and don't just do exactly what they're told. And that creates that tension that all creative teams know creates greatness. But they're by far less sycophantic or more sycophantic, than a person. The person would be, right? Creative teams challenge each other all the time, and they challenge the clients, and they see that as pretty key to the whole process. So let's talk a bit about that gap, the imagination gap. There's a view that AI is making us lazier at the brief stage because it can just generate so quickly. So why bother writing a great brief? You just do the entire thing, and then if it's bad, you come back to the beginning. Are you seeing this in practice? Do you think briefs are getting worse in an AI world or getting better?
I have seen people or teams keep the brief entirely. I don't think that AI is making people lazy. I think that AI is exposing that they were already lazy. Because AI is just so quick to show you the outputs in one click, including the bad ones. Then you react to the outputs and try to investigate and iterate the prompt or iterate the brief or iterate and start having that conversation back and forth with the AI. And that's when you kind of realize, like, damn it, I should have thought about it in the first place when I first started thinking about the brief. And I know this because I've seen it happen in teams when they start working with AI. And I myself have actually done it before. I've asked AI to generate hundreds of ad variations for me in one go. Like, the good old drag and generate these. And it did make me 100 video ads or 100 static ads. But were any of them usable? No. Because my prompt was just, make me 100 ads. for XYZ brands. The why, the what, the who you're targeting to, it was missing. Because the insights matter, the strategy matters. A brief reflects immediately the quality of your thinking.
And I think that's what we're seeing in the market with the latest paradigm shift, of clause and very high context being passed, dragging, the models away from the average, which is a whole new frontier. The question is, where does that context come from? And the partnership between the human and the agent is what creates that difference that isn't average.
Yeah.
And it takes us right back full circle to restarted the conversation on the working relationship between humans and AI. It's not really, you can't really call it just a tool anymore, a dumb tool. It has more autonomy and agency than it ever did, but it's also not a person. It doesn't have a mortgage, it doesn't have kids, it doesn't have any life experience. It only has textbook learning.
No, it's data, right? It's vast amount of data that's just pulling in for you at your disposal.
So let's keep talking about the technology. I think you have some questions for me.
So my first question for you is, one of the frustrations of creatives have been with AI tools is that the output doesn't match the intent of the brief. How is Pencil built to keep the strategy alive through the generation process?
Yeah. So one of the things that we are doing is raising what is available in the Pencil platform up to the level of the brief. Previously it was at the level of the prompt, deep down in the work. We've got to make the entire workflow available in Pencil so that the client can drop their brief in. The agents that have already been built by their team for that client can read the brief, challenge it using the client's own data. Maybe the client hasn't realized there's a holiday in a local market or an opportunity on TikTok that they didn't realize when they wrote the brief 3 days ago, and now the context is different. So by accepting the brief wholesale into Pencil, the agents can challenge it before it gets to the human team, right? So that's one thing in terms of keeping the strategy flowing. And the agents that are doing that challenging to the client are the same agents that would be helping the creative team downstream come up with their insights, coming up with their strategies and their content and all of the rest of it. Just including the brief in the AI workflow, the brief document, I think is the simple answer that we're pretty excited about.
The fronting models is about agents with clear permissions and boundaries. How does Pencil think about that? Is governance a creative constraint or a creative enabler?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question, right? Any creative person would say it's a constraint. Get rid of it. And that's part of the tension that makes great creative teams and their clients great. But AI systems are not humans. And because of their scalability, and because of the fact that humans don't give technology a break in the way that they give each other a break, you do need more governance with AI systems doing the same thing than you would necessarily with a human team, I think, because it's so easy to make mistakes. So I think that though that governance needs to be built in a way that is very deliberate if you're building creative AI systems, because if you lock it down, you destroy the freedom and the tension that makes for great work. And the best way to do that is to keep the governance layers very simple and very, very obvious, right? So we always encourage kind of legal and IT teams at clients to enable as many models in Pencil as they're able to, not try and lock it down to one model or two. Why? Because that then affords the creative team freedom to choose the right tool for the job. And very often you find that clients would prefer let's just pick one model and let's go. No, don't do that, right? If you do that, you will find that your creative team is constrained. So that's a really practical example of where overzealous and, with the right kind of motivation, teams might lock things down in a way that then hampers their ability to, produce great stuff with AI downstream. So it's just about understanding each other's worlds as we come more closer together. In what world did legal and creative have to kind of talk every day about what was needed? Now they do. So it's one of those interesting ways that even as AI becomes more embedded, we're having to interact with other humans more and more to make these things work.
Yeah, I think that gone are the days where we would create an output and go like, yeah, let's run that. I think the smaller company, the bigger companies don't really do this because like bigger brands, they tend to, they do talk to one another with the legal teams at least. You can't put a discount, you can't put terms and conditions and without clearing it with someone. So that's part of the governance as well. And I guess you're right. It is people talking with people maybe even training an agent to do this. Hanschell's mission is AI as a tool, not as a replacement. But as agents become more capable, something has to stay distinctively human in the work. What is it, and how do you protect it at scale?
I think there was a great quote. I think it was from IBM in the early days of computing that technology will ultimately do everything except be accountable, and I think that's the case today. Overall control should be held by a human, and if it's a creative task, it should be a creative human. And what we're seeing and what you're seeing, right? And the very best AI teams, including yours, Jules, are, of course, they're building agents. Of course, they're exploring how agents can help them explore more routes and explore more routes faster and respond to data and incorporate things that we know will make the advertising more effective. But the two teams that build the most agents in our company are the two people on this call, the training team and the creative team, right? And we're seeing that elevation that we hoped would happen plays out, right? It's not that agents now exist and we don't need the creative team anymore. It's that agents can do this and the creative team sits on top, okay? We move from prompting to agentic workflows or nodal workflows, and everybody just moves up. And that's why having, I think, the briefing process, which is the very highest level at the top in Pencil, allows us all to rise to the level where eventually the clients and the creative leadership are interacting more directly together, which is what both of them kind of have always wanted, but never been able to kind of scale in advertising. And AI is just helping us get to that level, right? And, there are even parts of the brand tech group talking about real-time creativity, not real-time as in make it now, launch it now, but real-time as in the brand leadership responsible for that brand's growth and the creative leadership responsible for that brand's relevance interacting in real time to come up with greatness. So it's not just about speed to market and pumping out, it's about interacting as people and as teams on either side of the fence between client and agency in real time, which I think we're seeing some very promising directional signs that that's where this is going, and that's the kind of thing we would have hoped for at the beginning of Pencil. But the line was, AI should be a tool, not a replacement. It's clear that it's becoming something more than a tool.
Yeah, you sold me in greatness. You're talking to CMOs and marketing leaders every week. Since Frontier launched, has the conversation with enterprise brands shifted? Are they asking different questions?
I think Frontier is like what Claude and Anthropic are doing with Cowork. It's an enterprise-safe environment for agents to live. It isn't super practical yet. I don't know of anyone asking questions specifically about Frontier. But of course, they're asking questions about agents as employees, OpenClaw, Claude Cowork. And it's clear that, chatting with ChatGPT has moved, maybe even in the last 3 months, to something very different. People buying Mac Minis and somebody on a call with eight agents, and that's the call. So there's something changing, and it has to do with AI being less of a tool and more of an entity with an identity that has agency and turns up to calls and does things in the background. And that the clients aren't even asking about that yet, I think, because it hasn't really gone mainstream yet, but that is for sure the direction of travel. I think it's interesting, and I think very hopeful that it has come out of what Peter Steinberger has done with OpenClaw, an open source movement, like the early days of the internet, right? And not through one of the established AI labs, although they're, of course, racing to incorporate the thinking. So, no, the clients aren't asking different questions yet, but they will be very soon.
I actually can't wait for that to happen. It really shows that the industry can move forward. If Frontier is the starting gun for the age of AI co-workers, what does creative production look like by the end of the year? What changes?
We're talking about Frontier, but I think Claude Cowork and there are a number of other solutions that are in the same kind of vein. I think creative production looks a lot more like it used to, right? With teams working productively towards greatness, but those teams are made up of agents and people, not people prompting AI tools. And I think that agents and people working in teams will feel a lot more natural to a lot more people, and it will bring an element of that kind of centralized control and brand governance that you get with technology that you don't get with people. So the hope is that you can do amazing things. Like every brand can have a very local version of its brand that is deeply embedded in cultural norms and nuances, but still it feels very much on brand, which doesn't really exist today. There's no such thing as a local iteration of a brand. It's impossible, right? So I think that it will feel familiar in many ways when agents and people are working together in teams, but it will be very different, and it will enable very different ways of doing advertising and marketing than we've been doing over the last 2 years with AI.
It'll be really interesting the effects that this all has on adoption as well, because what I'm taking away from this conversation is there are some things that are very specific skills that are hard to get right. But if you have a core within a team that's getting those things right, getting the briefing right, that's getting the agent right, you're then lowering the barrier to entry for other members of teams. Because at the moment where we're prompting, it's actually quite a hard skill, and it is quite a barrier for particularly more junior members in some teams.
I think that what we'll see in some of what we're releasing in Pencil over the next few months that incorporates some of the thinking that we've discussed today is that you won't be writing the prompts, you'll be having a discussion, and the agents will be learning from the discussion, and that will inform the prompts. So I'd love to go back to a question that I skipped actually when I was talking to Jules that maybe just closes this off quite nicely on AI-human hybrid teams. So if you were teaching a junior creative, Jules, how to brief an AI agent today or how to work with an AI agent, what would you tell them that you wouldn't have said maybe 2 or 3 years ago when AI first started, ChatGPT?
I have 3 things in mind. I guess the first one is don't prompt, make me a video and just drop a reference in. As I said before, say why you're making the video and who it's for. And if you don't know this, go and do your research and then come back with the details and start prompting it. Right? Write the brief. Second, be very careful with ambiguity and be open to more than one interpretation of the output. I'm talking about the ideas, the concepts, the insights. Because AI will take whatever you say literally, even if it's completely inappropriate and stereotyped. AI isn't always the source of truth. It generates from, as I said before, a vast amount of data. It is not a strategist. It is not a human. It doesn't know local nuances or cultural context. It is not its job. So if you're using AI, you need to put in this information and you need to go and you need to make sure that you are vetting the output even to some level, or like getting another human who is like cultural or in that group, like this group, to vet it to make sure that you're staying relevant. The third one is if you're using AI to win projects, think scale. It's not about one ad anymore. If you're going to use AI, I would say that don't just focus on the durable. Think of how you can scale it. Focus on the thinking behind it. Focus on the thinking behind it and how it can scale.
Perfect. I mean, I think thinking about all of those elements as well, clear to me that the brief is well and truly alive, and potentially more important than it's ever been. So for years, we've had briefs that were rushed. We've had briefs that were ineffective and could be ineffective because a human team would interpret them with human intelligence. Document could be written in 20 minutes, and like Jules has said, a creative team would hash it out. They'd have those relationships with the briefer to interpret that effectively. With AI, you need to be really, really clear about your intent. And that's turning the brief into the most important input in the entire system. If you can't brief a human creative clearly, if you can't get it right with that human intelligence, that human interpretation, you definitely aren't going to be able to effectively brief an AI agent. The skill is still there, though. There are great briefs out there. It's just something that we need to build and develop and teach more. At Pencil, we believe the magic happens when human intention meets AI execution, and intention starts, not a prompt, a brief. Thank you for joining us this week, and see you next time. The Pencil Perspective. New episodes bi-weekly.